A single bite of food saved a billionaire's life 15 years ago. He never forgot it, never forgot her. And when he walked into that small cafe and tasted her cooking again, he knew he had to repay the debt. What he offered the struggling waitress shocked everyone in the room. This story proves that your gifts never leave you, even when life tries to take everything away. Welcome to Radiant Story and Tales. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. Let me tell you a story about hope, about how sometimes life takes everything away from us, and then when we least expect it, gives us a reason to dream again. In a small corner of Chicago, there's a little restaurant called Maple Street Cafe. It's the kind of place where the paint is chipped on the window frames, where the tables wobble just a little bit, and where the smell of fresh coffee greets you like an old friend. Regular customers have been coming here for decades. They know each other's names, each other's troubles, each other's joys. Behind the counter, there was a woman named Grace Bennett. She moved quietly through the cafe, taking orders, pouring coffee, making sure everyone felt welcome. She had gentle eyes and a warm smile that made people feel like they mattered. Most customers thought she was just another waitress trying to make ends meet. They had no idea who she really was. You see, Grace was hiding something beautiful and painful at the same time. 15 years ago, she wasn't a waitress in a small cafe. 15 years ago, Grace was one of the most talented chefs in Boston. She had worked at a restaurant called the Blue Garden, a place where people paid hundreds of dollars for a single meal. Food critics wrote about her. Magazines wanted to interview her. She had won awards. She was on her way to opening her own restaurant, living the dream she'd had since she was a little girl watching her grandmother cook. But then life happened. Life, with all its cruelty and randomness, took everything away in one terrible night. Grace's husband, Thomas, was driving home from his job at the hospital. He was a nurse, the kindest man you'd ever meet. It was late, almost 3 a.m, and he was just 3 blocks from their apartment when a drunk driver ran a red light. Thomas died instantly, and with him died all of Grace's dreams. When you lose someone you love, the world doesn't stop. Bills still need to be paid. Life still demands that you keep moving. Grace had a baby daughter, little Emma, who was only 3 years old. She couldn't afford to fall apart. She couldn't afford to grieve the way she needed to. So she did what she had to do. She left Boston, left the cooking world behind, and came to Chicago to start over. That was 15 years ago. Now Emma was 18, a bright young woman about to graduate from high school, and Grace was still at Maple Street Cafe, serving coffee and taking orders, her talent hidden away like a secret she was afraid to remember. On this particular morning, the sun was shining through the old windows, making patterns on the wooden floor. Grace was wiping down tables, getting ready for the lunch crowd. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from working too hard, but the kind that comes from carrying heavy memories for too long. Then something happened that would change everything. A long black car pulled up outside the cafe. It looked expensive, completely out of place on this humble street. The door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall, probably in his mid-40s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Grace made in 3 months. His hair was starting to turn gray at the sides, and he looked tired. Not physically tired, but tired in his soul, if that makes sense. Grace recognized him immediately. Everyone in Chicago knew who he was. His name was William Hart, and he was one of the richest men in the city. He owned the tallest buildings, the biggest companies. His picture was always in the newspapers. What was a man like that doing at Maple Street Cafe? He walked in, and Grace approached him with her notepad. "Good morning, sir. Table for one?" William nodded and sat down in a corner booth. He kept checking his phone, looking distracted, like his mind was a million miles away. "Just coffee," he said quietly. "Black." Grace poured his coffee and was about to walk away when he suddenly looked up at her. "Actually," he said, his voice almost desperate, "what would you recommend? I haven't eaten a real meal in days. I need something that feels like comfort food, you know?" Grace studied his face for a moment. Behind the expensive suit and the powerful reputation. She saw something familiar. She saw pain. She saw exhaustion. She saw someone who was hurting in a way that money couldn't fix. And in that moment, something stirred inside her. Something she thought she'd buried forever. "The special today is herb-crusted salmon with lemon risotto," she said softly. It's comfort food. Sometimes that's what we need most." "Fine," William said. "Whatever you think is best." As Grace walked toward the kitchen, she made a decision that would crack open the door to her past. Instead of giving the order to the cook, she quietly started preparing the dish herself. Her hands remembered what to do, even after all these years. She selected the herbs carefully, touching them like old friends. She prepared the salmon the way she used to, with love and attention to every single detail. The kitchen filled with the smell of rosemary and thyme, and for just a moment, Grace felt like herself again. Her real self, the chef she used to be. When she placed the plate in front of William 15 minutes later, he stared at it. This wasn't diner food. This was art on a plate. He took one bite. Then he stopped completely. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. He looked at the plate, then up at Grace, then back at the plate again. "Excuse me," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Who made this dish?" And Grace felt her whole world start to tremble. Have you ever had a moment where your past and present crash into each other? Where a secret you've been keeping suddenly threatens to spill out into the open? That's what was happening to Grace right now, standing there in front of this powerful man, watching his face as he tasted her food. "I made it, sir," Grace said quietly, her hands clasped tightly together. "Is something wrong?" William set down his fork slowly. His eyes never left her face. "Wrong," he repeated. This is exactly like a dish I had 15 years ago, at the Blue Garden in Boston. Exactly the same. The herbs, the way the salmon is cooked, even the way it's arranged on the plate. I know because I ate this exact dish every single week for 2 years. Grace felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. The Blue Garden, her restaurant, the place where she'd poured her heart and soul, the place she'd left behind when Thomas died. "I think you must be mistaken, sir," she said, but her voice was shaking. "It's just our regular salmon special." William shook his head. "No," he said firmly, "I'm not mistaken. The chef who created this dish was named Grace Lauren. She was brilliant. She was going to change the culinary world." And then he stopped and his face changed. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "Wait, you're her. You're Grace Lauren." Hearing her old name spoken out loud felt like a punch to the chest. Grace looked around the cafe quickly. Thank God it was still quiet. Just a few regular customers who weren't paying attention. "Please," she whispered. "I'm just Grace Bennett now. That other life, it's over." But William was standing up now, his expression full of emotion. "I remember you," he said. "You won awards. You were on magazine covers. You were going to open your own place." Then his voice got softer, more gentle. "And then there was the accident. Your husband. I read about it. I'm so sorry." Tears stung Grace's eyes. She didn't talk about Thomas. Not with anyone. It hurt too much. "Why are you here?" William asked, looking around the humble cafe. "Why are you hiding? You're a talent. Grace, you're extraordinary. You could be running the best restaurant in Chicago." Grace laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Talent doesn't pay for a daughter's college tuition," she said. "Talent doesn't put food on the table or pay the electric bill. When Thomas died, I had a 3-year-old daughter and no safety net. The cooking world moves fast. They forget you the moment you're not useful anymore. So I started over. Simple, safe, enough. But is it really enough?" William asked gently. Before Grace could answer, the cafe door burst open. Emma came running in, still in her school uniform, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she cried. "Mom, they're saying I can't graduate." Grace's heart stopped. She rushed to her daughter, pulling her aside, aware that William was watching this private moment unfold. "Baby, what are you talking about? The principal called me to her office," Emma sobbed. "She said our tuition payment bounced. If we don't have the money by Friday, I can't walk at graduation. Mom, all my friends will be there. I've worked so hard for this. I'm supposed to give a speech. I'm supposed to... Emma couldn't finish. She just cried, and Grace held her, feeling like the worst mother in the world. She'd been so sure she'd saved enough. She'd been so careful with every penny. But the car had needed repairs last month, and the landlord had raised the rent, and somehow the numbers just didn't add up anymore. How much do you need? William asked quietly. Grace turned to him, her face hot with shame. Sir, please. This is private. This isn't your concern. But Emma, innocent Emma who didn't understand pride or shame, blurted out, $3,000 for my senior fees and graduation expenses. Then she laughed through her tears, a hopeless sound. Might as well be $3 million for all the chance we have of getting it. William reached for his phone, but Grace stepped forward, finding strength she didn't know she had. No, she said firmly. I won't take charity. I've never taken handouts, and I'm not going to start now. We'll figure something out. It wouldn't be charity, William said, his mind clearly working fast. It would be an investment. In what? Grace asked. In you. In your gift. He looked around the cafe, then back at her with intense focus. I've been searching for someone for 6 months now. My company is opening a new restaurant in downtown Chicago. Not just any restaurant. Something that will become legendary. I need a head chef who understands that food is more than just taste. Someone who understands that food is love made visible. Someone who cooks with their soul. Grace stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You don't understand. I've been out of that world for 15 years. I haven't worked in a real kitchen. Haven't created a menu. Haven't managed a staff. I can't. Can't what? William interrupted. Can't pour your heart into every dish? Can't turn basic ingredients into something magical? He pointed at his plate. This salmon, made in this tiny kitchen with limited equipment, is better than anything I've eaten in restaurants where meals cost $500. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because you're extraordinary. Emma looked between her mother and this stranger who was offering them a miracle. Mom, you used to be famous? I wasn't famous, honey, Grace said softly. I was just different then. And in that moment, standing between her past and her future, Grace had to decide. Would she stay safe, or would she dare to dream again? You know what's scary? It's not failure. We've all failed before. We know what that feels like. What's truly terrifying is getting a second chance at something you thought you'd lost forever. Because what if you try again and it doesn't work? What if you discover that the person you used to be is gone for good? That's what Grace was feeling as she stood there, looking at this man who somehow remembered her food from 15 years ago. William sat back down in the booth, and his whole body language changed. The businessman facade melted away. He looked vulnerable now, almost fragile. Let me tell you why this matters so much to me, he said quietly. Grace and Emma both sat down across from him, drawn in by something in his voice. 15 years ago, William began, my father died. He left me his company, but it was drowning in debt. Everyone expected me to fail. I was 28 years old, completely overwhelmed, and I had no idea what I was doing. Every night, I felt like I was letting him down. I felt like I was letting everyone down. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. I used to come to the Blue Garden every evening. I'd sit in the corner, spread out my papers, business plans, loan applications, rejection letters from banks. Your staff probably thought I was crazy, spending 3 hours there over one meal. But I kept coming back because... His voice cracked slightly. Because your food reminded me that beauty still existed in the world. That excellence was possible. That if you put enough care into something, you could create something perfect. Grace felt tears building in her eyes. She did remember him now. The young man who always sat alone, who always looked so worried, who always left generous tips even though he looked like he could barely afford the meal. That salmon dish, William continued, became my anchor. On my worst days, when I wanted to give up, I'd tell myself, just make it to dinner at the Blue Garden. Your food didn't just feed my body, it fed my hope. Emma was crying now too, watching her mother's face as she heard this story. "I saved my father's company," William said. "I turned it around, built it into what it is today. And I've never forgotten that the reason I didn't give up was because of your cooking. Because you showed me that simple ingredients, handled with care and love, could become something extraordinary. That's what I needed to learn to save the business. Quality over flash. Heart over hype." The cafe was completely quiet now. Even the other customers seemed to sense that something important was happening. "So when I tasted that salmon today," William said, looking directly at Grace, "and it was exactly the same after 15 years, I knew this wasn't coincidence. This was meant to happen." Grace wiped her eyes. "I don't understand what you're offering," she said honestly. William pulled out his phone and showed her something. "Architectural plans for a beautiful restaurant. This is going to be the centerpiece of our new downtown development. I've interviewed 25 chefs. All of them were technically perfect. All of them had impressive resumes. And all of them were missing something. They cooked with their egos, not their hearts." He looked at Emma, then back at Grace. "The position comes with a salary of $200,000 a year, full health benefits, a signing bonus of $50,000. He paused. "That would cover Emma's graduation, her college tuition, and give you a safety net while you transition." Emma gasped. Grace felt dizzy. "But I need to be clear about something," William continued. "I'm not offering you this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering this because you're the best chef I've ever encountered. You have a gift that can't be taught, and I believe you're meant to share it with the world." "I don't know if I can," Grace whispered. "I'm not that person anymore. That confident young chef who thought she could conquer the world? She died the night Thomas died." "No," William said gently. "She's been sleeping, waiting, healing, but she's still in there. I tasted her in every bite of that salmon." Frank, the cafe owner, appeared from the kitchen. He'd obviously been listening. "Grace, honey," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you take this opportunity and you don't look back. You hear me? But Frank, you've been so good to me." "Good to you?" Frank laughed. "Girl, you've tripled my business just by working here. People come back because of the magic you bring to the food. I always knew you were meant for something bigger than this place." Grace looked at Emma's hopeful face. She looked at Frank's encouraging smile. She looked at William, this man who had carried the memory of her food for 15 years. And she thought about Thomas. What would he want her to do? Thomas always believed in her. Even when she doubted herself, he believed. He used to say, "Grace, your cooking is a gift, and gifts are meant to be shared, not hidden away." "I'm scared," Grace admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," William said. "I was scared 15 years ago, too. But I had your food to remind me that taking risks was worth it. Now maybe I can return the favor." He reached into his wallet and pulled out an envelope. "Here's $5,000. An advance on your signing bonus. Make sure Emma walks at her graduation. Then come see the restaurant space tomorrow. Bring Emma. Look around. If it doesn't feel right, walk away. No pressure. No obligation. But if it does feel right," he smiled, "then let's build something beautiful together." Grace took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside wasn't just money. Inside was hope. Inside was a second chance at the life she thought was gone forever. Sometimes, my friends, life gives us a gift disguised as a risk. The question is, are we brave enough to accept it? The next morning, Grace stood in front of her closet, staring at the clothes she hadn't worn in 15 years. Hidden in the back, behind her waitress uniforms and casual clothes, was a white chef's jacket. She pulled it out slowly, running her fingers over fabric. It still had her name embroidered on it, Chef Grace Lauren. She kept it all these years, unable to throw it away, unable to wear it. It was a reminder of everything she'd lost and everything she'd once been. "Mom!" Emma appeared in the doorway. "Are you okay?" Grace smiled, tears in her eyes. "I'm terrified, baby. Absolutely terrified. But you're going to do it, right?" Emma asked hopefully. "You're going to see the restaurant?" Grace nodded. "Yes, we're going to see it. Together." 2 hours later, They stood in front of a beautiful building in downtown Chicago. The restaurant space was on the ground floor, with huge windows that let in floods of natural light. William was waiting for them outside, looking less formal than yesterday, more relaxed. "Welcome," he said warmly. "Come on, let me show you the space." As they walked inside, Grace felt her breath catch. The restaurant was still under construction, but she could see the vision. It was elegant but warm, sophisticated but welcoming, not pretentious, not cold. It felt like a place where people would come to celebrate life's important moments. And the kitchen, oh, the kitchen. It was a chef's dream. State-of-the-art equipment, plenty of workspace, beautiful lighting. Grace walked through it slowly, touching the counters, the stoves, the prep stations. Her hands remembered what to do, even after all this time. "What do you think?" William asked quietly. Grace couldn't speak. She was overwhelmed. Emma grabbed her hand, squeezing it encouragingly. "I think," Grace finally said, "I think Thomas would have loved this place." Over the next few months, something magical happened. Grace came back to life. Not the old Grace who had been so focused on impressing critics and winning awards. A new Grace. One who understood that the best food comes from a place of love, not ambition. She hired a small team of cooks, carefully choosing people who understood that cooking was about more than just technique. She created a menu that combined elegance with comfort, innovation with tradition. Every dish told a story. Every flavor had meaning. William was true to his word. He gave her complete creative control. He trusted her vision. And slowly, Grace began to trust herself again. Emma helped out on weekends, watching her mother transform from a tired waitress into a confident chef. She saw her mother laugh again. Really laugh. She saw her mother's eyes light up when she talked about food. She saw her mother become fully alive for the first time in 15 years. "You know what I realize now?" Grace told Emma one evening as they worked together in the kitchen. "I thought I was honoring your father's memory by playing it safe, by hiding. But that's not what he would have wanted. He always pushed me to be brave, to take risks, to share my gifts with the world." Emma hugged her mother tightly. "He'd be so proud of you, Mom." The restaurant was named Second Chances. Grace chose that name deliberately, because that's what this place represented for her. A second chance at her dreams. A second chance at joy. A second chance at life. Frank from Maple Street Cafe came to visit often. William had helped him expand his little cafe into a small chain, with Grace consulting on the menu. Frank beamed with pride every time he saw Grace in her element. "You're glowing, girl," he told her one day. "This is where you belong." Opening night arrived faster than Grace expected. The restaurant was fully booked. Food critics from across the country had made reservations. Local newspapers were covering the story of the mysterious chef who disappeared from the culinary world and returned with something extraordinary. Grace stood in the kitchen before service started. Her team gathered around her. She looked at their faces, young cooks who reminded her of herself 15 years ago, full of passion and hope. "Listen," she said to them, "tonight is going to be intense. There will be critics out there, important people, high expectations. But I want you to forget all that. Cook like you're feeding your family. Cook with love. That's the only thing that matters." The first orders came in. Grace's hands moved with practiced precision, but also with joy. She wasn't just cooking. She was creating. She was sharing pieces of her heart on every plate. William sat at a table in the dining room, watching through the kitchen window as Grace worked. He smiled, remembering that young man he used to be, sitting in the blue garden, eating her food and finding hope. Now he was watching her gift being shared with the world again, and he felt like he'd done something truly meaningful with his success. The reviews came in the next day. They were extraordinary. But what moved Grace most wasn't the critics' praise. It was the letters from regular customers. People who said they felt loved when they ate her food. People who said the restaurant made them feel at home. People who said every bite tasted like hope. One woman wrote, "I brought my elderly mother to Second Chances for her birthday. She has dementia and barely recognizes me anymore. But when she tasted the salmon, she smiled and said, 'This tastes like love.' She was right. Thank you for giving me one more precious memory with her." Grace cried when she read that letter, because that's exactly what she wanted to create. Food that mattered. Food that touched people's souls. Food that reminded people that beauty and love still exist in the world. She thought about Thomas constantly. She talked to him in her mind, sharing her triumphs and her fears. And she felt deep in her heart that he was proud of her, that he was smiling. Sometimes second chances come when we least expect them. Sometimes they come disguised as endings or losses or moments of despair. But if we're brave enough to recognize them and grab hold, they can transform our entire lives. 6 months after opening, Grace stood in her kitchen at Second Chances, watching the evening service begin. Everything had changed, yet somehow everything felt exactly right. Emma was in the dining room, dressed in her high school graduation cap and gown, celebrated with friends before heading off to culinary school in the fall. She'd received a full scholarship, inspired by watching her mother reclaim her passion. The restaurant had become more than just a place to eat. It had become a gathering place, a community hub, a spot where people came to celebrate their most important moments. Anniversaries, birthdays, reconciliations, new beginnings. All of life's pivotal moments seemed to find their way to second chances. Grace had kept something special from her Maple Street Cafe days. She insisted on the same personal touches that made that little cafe special. She remembered regular customers' preferences. She sent out personalized dishes for special occasions. She made sure every guest felt seen, valued, important. One evening, an older couple came in for their 50th wedding anniversary. Grace created a special menu based on their love story. Dishes that represented different chapters of their life together. They cried when she came out to explain each course. "This isn't just dinner," the husband said. "This is our life, honored and celebrated. Thank you." Those were the moments that made everything worthwhile. William visited the restaurant often. He and Grace had become genuine friends, bonded by their shared understanding of loss, resilience, and second chances. He'd tell anyone who would listen about how her food had saved him 15 years ago, and how getting to help her return to cooking was the best business decision he'd ever made. "You know what's funny?" he told her one quiet afternoon when they were sitting in the empty restaurant. "I've made billions of dollars. I've built skyscrapers. I've closed deals that changed the city's landscape. But helping you open this restaurant? This feels like my greatest accomplishment." Grace smiled. "You didn't just help me open a restaurant, William. You gave me my life back. You reminded me that it's possible to dream again after loss. That's bigger than any building you could ever construct." Frank came by that evening, bringing some of the regular customers from Maple Street Cafe. They'd become Grace's unofficial cheerleading squad, proud as if they'd raised her themselves. Old Pete was there, still grumpy but with the biggest smile. Martha brought her famous apple pie as a gift, even though Grace's desserts were world-class. "We always knew you were special," Martha said, hugging Grace tightly. "We just didn't know how special." As the evening service wound down, Grace prepared one final plate, her signature salmon dish, the dish that had started everything. She plated it with the same care she'd given it 15 years ago in Boston, the same care she'd given it in the humble cafe, the same care she gave every dish now. She brought it to William's table herself. "For old time's sake," she said with a smile. William took a bite and closed his eyes. "Still perfect," he said. "Still hope on a plate." Emma joined them, still in her graduation gown. "Mom, they want you to come say hi to my friends. They can't believe my mom is the famous chef everyone's talking about." Grace laughed. "I'm not famous, honey. I'm just doing what I love." "No, Mom," Emma said seriously. "You're doing something more important than that. You're showing people that it's never too late to come back from tragedy, that it's never too late to try again." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Grace stood alone in her kitchen. She ran her hand over the clean counters, breathed in the lingering smells of the evening service, and felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about Thomas. She could picture him so clearly, leaning against the counter with that proud smile he used to get when he watched her cook. "You did it, Grace," she imagined him saying. "You found your way back." And she realized something important. She hadn't lost 15 years. Those years at Maple Street Cafe, those years of struggle and survival, Those years of putting Emma first and dream second, they hadn't been wasted. They'd taught her something crucial. They'd taught her that food isn't about impressing people or winning awards or getting recognition. Food is about connection. Food is about love. Food is about nourishing people's souls, not just their bodies. The young chef she'd been 15 years ago was talented, yes, but she'd been cooking for the wrong reasons. She'd been cooking to prove something, to achieve something, to become someone important. Now she cooked because she understood that feeding people was one of the most sacred acts of service in the world. Every dish was a prayer. Every meal was a gift. Every guest was someone's loved one, deserving of care and attention. That's what those 15 years had taught her, and that's what made her cooking truly extraordinary now. Grace pulled out her phone and looked at a photo of Thomas that she still kept. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me Emma. I'm going to keep making you proud." As she locked up the restaurant and walked out into the Chicago night, Grace felt something she hadn't felt in 15 years. She felt whole, not because the pain of losing Thomas was gone. That pain would always be a part of her, but because she'd learned that you can carry grief and joy at the same time. You can honor the past while embracing the future. You can lose everything and still find reasons to keep going. Life had knocked her down, but she'd gotten back up. And in getting back up, she discovered that second chances don't erase the pain of what we've lost. They give us the opportunity to transform that pain into something beautiful, something meaningful, something that touches other people's lives. So if you're reading this and you're going through something hard, remember Grace's story. Remember that it's never too late. Remember that your gifts don't disappear just because life gets difficult. Remember that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives come after the most painful ones. Keep going. Keep dreaming. Keep believing that second chances are possible. Because they are. Grace's story proves it. And maybe, just maybe, your second chance is waiting right around the corner, disguised as an ordinary day, ready to change everything. Thank you for being here for this story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. We all need reminders that hope is real, that dreams can come back to life, and that it's never, ever too late to try again.